watch hit the floor before she even understood what had happened. 1 second, she was rushing through the marble lobby of the Hanwook Tower with her arms full of dry-cleaned garments, 3 heavy bags cutting into her shoulders, her phone sliding out of her grip, and the next second she turned too fast, too desperate to catch the phone. And her elbow connected with something solid and her body spun, and there was a sound, a sharp, devastating crack, that she felt in her teeth before she heard it with her ears. She looked down. A watch. Face down on the polished floor. Black strap. Gold details. And even upside down, even cracked, even in the single worst second of her entire week, she could tell it was the kind of thing that didn't have a price tag because people who bought things like that didn't need to know the price. She looked up. The man looking back at her was not a man she had ever seen before. She would have remembered. Tall. Korean. The kind of face that had been arranged by genetics with the specific geometric precision of someone who had never needed to work for a room's attention. Dark eyes that were looking at her right now with an expression so completely controlled it was more frightening than anger would have been. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him the way things fit people who had them made specifically for their bodies, and he was holding his wrist where the watch had been, and he was very, very still. Around them the lobby was moving. Assistants, deliveries, the ordinary business of a building that housed the headquarters of Hanwook Group, one of the 3 most powerful corporate families in Korea. All of it continuing. None of it mattering. That, he said, his voice quiet and precise, was a Patek Philippe Grandmaster chime. She didn't know what that meant. She was about to find out. It is worth 420 million won. The dry-cleaned garments slid out of her arms. Her name was Gloria Obi, 28 years old. Nigerian. 1 year in Seoul on a working visa, she had nearly lost twice already. She drove for a delivery service 3 days a week and cleaned offices 2 nights a week, and on Saturdays she worked the counter at her aunt's dry cleaning shop, which was why she was here, in this lobby, with her arms full of someone else's expensive clothes, at the exact worst possible moment of her existence. She picked up the watch with shaking hands. The face was cracked across the middle. Clean diagonal split, corner to corner. Like a broken promise. She set it on the reception counter between them. 420 million won. She made 1.3 million a month on a good month. I'm sorry, she said. Her voice was steady. She was very proud of that. I can pay for it. He looked at her for a long moment. Can you, he said. She met his eyes. I can pay for it, she repeated. It will take time. But I will pay for it. Something shifted in his expression. Not warmth. The very distant cousin of respect. My name is Shin Jae-hyun, he said. I am the CEO of Hanwook Group. And you have until the end of this week to propose to me how you intend to honor that commitment. Or I will pursue the matter through the appropriate legal channels. He picked up the watch. Put it in his jacket pocket. Walked to the elevator. The doors closed. Gloria stood in the lobby of the Hanwook Tower holding 3 bags of dry-cleaned clothes and thought about how her life had been hard before this moment and how naive she had been not to appreciate that. Before we go any further, if you are new here, welcome to Afro Soul Secrets TV. This is the channel that does not do safe love stories. Subscribe right now and hit the notification bell because this story is going to take you somewhere you did not expect. Now let's go back. She spent 3 days trying to find another way. She called the insurance company that handled her delivery work. They laughed. She called the dry cleaning shop's insurance. Her aunt, who had the specific energy of a woman who loved her niece, but also had 4 children and a mortgage, went very quiet for a long time and then said she was sorry. She went to 2 banks. The loan officer at the first bank looked at her income statements and was very kind and very definitive. The second bank didn't make it past the front desk. On the 3rd night, she sat at her kitchen table in her small apartment in Mapogu with her laptop open and a cup of tea going cold, and she did the math 17 different ways, and the math kept giving her the same answer. She called the number on the business card the receptionist had given her on her way out of the lobby. It rang twice. Miss Obi, said the voice she recognized immediately. I was wondering when you would call. I have a proposal, she said. I'm listening. She closed her eyes. I will work for you. Directly. Whatever you need. I am a hard worker. I am reliable. I show up on time. I do not complain, and I will do this until the debt is cleared. She breathed. I know it will take a long time, but I keep my word. And I need you to consider that taking me to court will cost you time and money and probably won't recover anything because I have nothing to recover. This way you get the value back eventually. Silence. She counted 5 seconds. Be at Hanwook Tower at 7 a.m. Friday, he said. Bring your documents. The line went dead. She sat at the table for a long time. Then she started making a list of everything she would need to learn about working in a household like his. His house was not a house. It was a residence. The word the assistant, a brisk Korean woman named Chai who had the energy of someone who had been managing chaos for decades and had achieved a state of permanent calm about it, used when she gave Gloria the orientation. A penthouse that occupied the entire top floor of a building in Gangnam, 42 floors up, with views of Seoul from every wall and a kitchen bigger than Gloria's entire apartment. There were 3 other staff. A driver. A cook who came in 3 times a week. A cleaner who came on Mondays. Gloria's role, as Chai explained with the slightly apologetic precision of someone delivering complicated news to a capable person, was to fill the gaps. General household management. Personal errands. Managing the CEO's schedule overlap with his personal needs that his office assistant did not cover. He is not difficult, Chai said. He is precise. He notices everything. He has a particular way he wants things done, and once you know what that way is, it is simple. The difficulty is the learning period. How long is the learning period? Chai looked at her. That depends on how quickly you pay attention. Gloria paid attention. She learned that he took his coffee at 6:45 a.m., not 7, and that this was not a preference, but a fixed point in his day around which everything else orbited. She learned that he could tell when the books on his study shelf had been moved even by a centimeter. She learned that he had a very specific intolerance for food being served at the wrong temperature that was not about entitlement, but about the fact that he ate while working and cold food was a distraction. She learned that he worked until 2 in the morning most nights, and that he almost never ate dinner at a table, and that the dark circles under his eyes that she noticed on the 3rd day were not new. She did not learn his face as quickly as she thought she would. He was in the residence perhaps 4 hours a day, moving through it with the efficiency of a man who considered his own home primarily a logistical base. He said what he needed. He acknowledged when something was done correctly with a single nod. He did not engage. On the 6th day, he was still at his desk at 11 p.m. and Gloria, who had stayed late reorganizing the kitchen storage because she had found a system she thought worked better, carried tea to his study without being asked. She set it on the coaster 3 centimeters from his right hand and stepped back. He picked it up without looking up from the document he was reading. Drank it. Set it down. Went back to reading. She went home. The next morning Chai looked at her with an expression that was, for Chai, the equivalent of open surprise. He told me the tea was the correct temperature, Chai said. It was, Gloria said. He has never commented on the tea before. Gloria said nothing. She went to start the laundry. The first real conversation happened on the 2nd week. She was in the kitchen at 7 p.m. preparing the dinner tray, the cook's day off, which meant Gloria, who had a talent for food that she had inherited from a grandmother who believed cooking was a form of love, when she heard him come in from the building's private elevator. Earlier than usual. And something in the quality of his movement was different. She couldn't have explained how she knew. She simply knew. She plated the food, carried it to the dining room. He was standing at the window looking at the city. He had loosened his tie. For Shin Jae-hyun, Gloria had already understood. This was the equivalent of another man sitting on the floor in despair. She set the plate on the table and turned to go. Sit down, he said. She turned back. I'm sorry. You have not had dinner. He said it the way he said most things, as a fact he had observed rather than an accusation. Sit down. She sat. He sat at the head of the table. She sat 2 seats away at the corner. The distance felt correct. He ate. She ate, a plate that had appeared in front of her from somewhere, which meant he had already told the kitchen to prepare for 2, which meant he had known she was still there, which was a layer of awareness she filed away carefully. Where are you from? He said. Nigeria. Lagos. Why Seoul? Opportunity, she said. And stubbornness. She paused. In roughly equal measure. He looked at her for a second. The way he sometimes looked at things he was categorizing. How old are you? 28. What did you study? Economics. She kept her voice even. I have a degree I have not used yet in a way that matches what I am capable of. Why not? Because the path between having something and being allowed to use it is longer for some people than others, and I have not found the right door yet. She looked at him. I will. He said nothing for a moment. The kitchen storage reorganization, he said. The new system is more efficient. I know. You didn't ask permission. You weren't here and it needed doing. I documented the change and left a note with Chai. Another look. Longer this time. Eat, he said. She ate. They didn't speak again. But the silence was different from the silences before. Less like absence and more like the particular quiet of two people who had said something real and were letting it settle. The antagonist arrived on a Tuesday. His name was Director Yoon Sang-pil, and he was 53 years old and had been Shin Jae-hyun's father's closest business associate for 20 years and had, in Gloria's assessment within the first 60 seconds of meeting him, the energy of a man who believed he was owed things he had not earned. He arrived at the residence uninvited, which told Gloria immediately that either Jae-hyun allowed this, or he had arrived specifically because Jae-hyun was not home. He walked through the residence with the proprietary ease of someone who had decided it was partially his. And when he found Gloria in the study returning books to the shelf, he stopped and looked at her with an expression she had seen before and recognized and did not like. You are new, he said in Korean, which she now understood well enough to follow. I am, she said in Korean. He walked toward her. Too far into her space. A Nigerian? Working in Jae-hyun's home. He smiled the kind of smile that was not a smile. He is collecting interesting things lately. I am not a thing, she said. Evenly. Precisely. The way she had said everything to men who spoke to her like that for 28 years. He blinked. People did not apparently speak to Director Yoon like that. You should be careful, he said softly. Your position here is very fragile. So is everyone's, she said. Director. She turned back to the books. He left. She stood at the shelf for a moment after she heard the elevator close and breathed carefully through her nose. She told Chai about the visit. Chai's expression went to somewhere complicated. Director Yoon, she said, has been trying to push Jae-hyun toward a merger that would give Yoon Industries a controlling stake in Hanwook Group. Jae-hyun has refused twice. The director does not accept refusal well. Is he dangerous? Chai looked at her. He is the kind of man, she said carefully, who does not do things himself. Gloria nodded. She already knew that kind. Hit that like button right now if this story is already doing something to you. And drop a comment, do you think Jae-hyun knows Yoon came to his house? Because what he finds out in the next part will change everything. Subscribe if you haven't already. This is Afro Soul Secrets TV. Jae-hyun found out on Thursday. He said nothing when Gloria told him. She had decided to tell him directly rather than through Chai because she was not the kind of person who delivered information at a slant. She stood in his study doorway at 9 p.m. and told him what had happened, what was said, what she had said back, and what Chai had told her afterward. He listened with the complete focused attention he gave everything. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. You told him he was not a thing, he said. I told him I was not a thing, she corrected. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. You should have told me immediately, he said. I did not know at the time whether it was relevant to you or simply unpleasant to me. In this building, he said, anything that involves Yoon Sang-pil is relevant to me. I know that now. He looked at her. Is there anything else I should know, he said. He has a key to the building, she said. Or someone let him up. Because he arrived without being announced by reception. The temperature in the room changed. Not her imagination. The specific shift of a very controlled man processing information that had implications he was calculating rapidly. Thank you, he said. She went to bed. At 2 a.m, she heard him on the phone in the corridor outside her room. The residence had a small staff bedroom she had been given speaking in rapid Korean that she followed 70% of. And the 70% she followed told her that whoever had given Yoon access to the building's private elevator was no longer going to be doing anything for anyone connected to Jae-hyun. She lay in the dark and thought about the kind of man who dismantled problems at 2 in the morning without raising his voice. She thought about what it meant that she found that compelling instead of frightening. She went back to sleep. The dinner happened on week 3. Not between them, a formal dinner, 8 guests, the kind of event that Jae-hyun apparently held twice a year and that Gloria had not been warned about with adequate lead time, which was her primary professional grievance, as she managed the coordination of catering, flowers, table settings, and a seating arrangement that apparently contained a political subtext she had to have explained to her by Chai in 15 minutes. She managed it. All of it. The flowers were right. The food arrived at the correct temperatures. The seating arrangement honored exactly the unspoken hierarchies that Chai had described. She moved through the evening like a ghost, invisible when invisibility was needed, present the instant anything was required. At 10 p.m. when the last guest had left and the catering team was clearing up, she was standing in the kitchen going over the inventory when Jae-hyun came in. He had removed his jacket, rolled his cuffs. He was holding a glass of water and he looked, underneath the control, the specific exhaustion of a man who had spent 4 hours performing for people he did not choose. He stood at the kitchen island. He looked at her. "The dinner," he said. "Yes. It was perfect." She looked up from the inventory. "I know." He was quiet for a second. Then something that was unmistakably, completely, and without ambiguity, a real smile crossed his face. Brief. Real. The kind that lived in someone for a long time before it came out. She felt it land somewhere in her chest that she did not have professional clearance for. "You have no trouble being pleased with yourself," he said. "I have worked hard enough to know when I have done something well," she said. "I don't think that's a flaw." "It's not," he said. "It's the opposite." He left. She stood in the kitchen for a moment and pressed the back of her hand to her mouth. She was a maid in a debt repayment arrangement. She was not doing this. She went back to the inventory. 2 things happened on the same day in week 4 that changed everything. The first was that Jae-hyun came home at noon, unheard of, and found Gloria at the dining table with her economics textbooks and a notebook filled with work she had been doing in her spare time, working through an application she had been building toward for months. He stood in the doorway and looked at the books and the notes and the careful, organized effort of it. "What is this?" he said. "Personal project," she said, starting to close the books. "Don't." He crossed the room, stood at the other side of the table, looked at the notes. "You are building a financial model." "Yes." "For what?" She met his eyes. "For a proposal to a development bank. There's a funding program for SME development in West Africa that closes in 6 weeks. I've been tracking it for 2 years. I have an idea for a microfinance structure that I believe would qualify." She paused. "I do not have the right contacts. I am working on that." He looked at the notes for a long moment. "Sit down," he said. She sat. He sat across from her. "Walk me through it," he said. She blinked. "I'm sorry. The model. Walk me through it." She walked him through it. All of it. The structure, the assumptions, the risk model, the projected impact, the gap in the current market she was trying to address. He listened the way he listened to everything, completely, actively, with the specific quality of a man who was running calculations behind his eyes while she spoke. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he pointed to the 3rd page of her notes. "Your interest rate assumption here is wrong," he said. "Not wrong as in incorrect for your model. Wrong as in the bank you're targeting adjusted their benchmark rate 6 weeks ago, and the number you're working from is outdated. It changes your equity ratio here," he pointed, "and here." She looked at the numbers. He was right. She felt something in her chest that was equal parts embarrassment and elation. "How do you know the adjustment?" she said. "Because I was in the meeting where they announced it," he said. "Hanwook has a seat on the bank's advisory panel." The air in the room was very still. "Mr. Shin," she said carefully. "Jae-hyun," he said. The first time he had said it that way. The first time his name in this context had meant what it now meant. She held his gaze. "Would you be willing to look at the full model?" she said. "As a professional courtesy. Not connected to anything else." He looked at her for a long moment. "Leave it on my desk," he said. She did. The second thing that happened that day was the envelope. She found it slipped under the staff room door while she was changing into her outside clothes to run an errand. White. Plain. Her name in Korean on the front. Inside, a printed photograph, taken from some distance, somewhat grainy, but clear enough. Her and Jae-hyun at the kitchen island the night of the dinner. Him standing close. Her looking up at him. The expression on her face in the photograph was one she had not known was visible. Below the photograph, a typed message. 6 words. "Your position here is very fragile." The same words Yoon had used. She stood in the staff room with the envelope in her hands and breathed carefully. Then she put the photograph and the message in her bag. Went and ran the errand. Came back. Knocked on the study door. He looked up when she entered. She put the envelope on his desk. He looked at it. Opened it. Looked at the photograph and the message for a long, very controlled moment. "When?" he said. "This afternoon. Under my door." He set it down. "You weren't going to tell me," he said. "I was always going to tell you," she said. "I needed 5 hours to decide how I felt about it first so I could tell you clearly rather than emotionally." He looked at her with the dark eyes. "You needed 5 hours," he said. "I am very thorough," she said. He stood up. He was, for the first time in her experience of him, not in control of his expression in the way he usually was. Something underneath the control was visible. Something with edges. "This will not happen again," he said. "I know," she said. "You're not," he stopped. Started again. "You're under my roof. Under my protection. That extends to any action taken against you because of your association with this household." "Jae-hyun," she said. He went still. "I have been protecting myself my entire life," she said. "I appreciate that you are angry on my behalf. But I need you to understand that this," she gestured at the envelope, "does not frighten me. It tells me someone is watching. Which means someone is afraid. And people do not threaten women they consider irrelevant." The look on his face was something she had not seen before and could not name. "You are," he said slowly, "the most unusual person I have ever employed." "You are not the first person to say something like that. I doubt they meant it the same way I do." She looked at him. The room was very quiet. "I should go," she said. "You have work." Gloria. Her name in his voice. First time. Full name. The specific weight of it. "Yes," she said. "The model is good," he said. "The section on impact measurement is the strongest I have seen in a proposal at this stage. When I have notes, I will give them to you." She nodded once. She left. She walked to her room. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked at her hands and told herself very firmly that she was in a debt arrangement with a man who was her employer and that this was not the time and not the situation and not the answer to anything. She believed this with approximately 50% of herself. The other 50% was thinking about how he had said her name. Director Yoon moved faster than either of them expected. The board meeting was 3 weeks away, the meeting at which Jae-hyun would formally reject Yoon Industries' merger proposal for the third and final time. A rejection that Chai had explained would permanently close the door on Yoon's ambitions to absorb Hanwook Group's logistics division. Yoon apparently understood that his window was closing. He went to the media. A story appeared in a financial gossip publication, the specific kind that had just enough plausible deniability to be hard to legally challenge, suggesting that CEO Shin Jae-hyun had been compromised in his professional judgment by an inappropriate personal relationship with a domestic employee. The story named no one directly. It didn't need to. The photograph from the envelope was attached. Gloria found out at 6 a.m. on a Wednesday from her phone. She read the story twice. Then she called Chai. "He already knows," Chai said. "He has been on call since 4 a.m. "What do you need from me?" Gloria said. "He says nothing. He says continue normally." "That is not an answer to my question." A pause. "He says nothing," Chai repeated. More gently. Gloria made coffee. Prepared the tray. 6:45 a.m. exactly. Carried it to the study. He was on a call. He gestured for her to enter. She set the tray down. Turned to go. "Stay," he said, covering the phone briefly. Then back to the call. She stayed. She stood near the window and looked at Sol and listened to him dismantle the situation on the phone with the cold, systematic efficiency of a man who had been preparing for this possibility and had not been surprised. By 7:30, he had spoken to his legal team, his communications director, and at least 2 board members. He was calm in the way of someone who was channeling something enormous into productive use. When the last call ended, he set the phone down. He looked at her. "Are you all right?" he said. "I should be asking you that." "I am asking you." She turned from the window. "I am angry," she said. "I am angry that someone took a photograph of a moment that was private and used it to try to damage you through me. I am angry that I am the vector for this attack simply by existing in your life." She held his gaze. "I am not afraid and I am not ashamed. But I am very angry." He stood up. He crossed the room. He stopped in front of her. "Close. The story will be addressed today," he said. "Legally and publicly. Yoon has overplayed his hand. The publication of that photograph constitutes an actionable privacy violation, and my legal team is already building the case. By the board meeting, there will be nothing left of his position to stand on. And until then," she said. "Until then," he said, "I need you to know something." She looked up at him. "What is in that photograph," he said, "is not something I am willing to pretend didn't happen. Or explain away. Or reduce to what someone else has tried to make it mean." He held her gaze with the dark, layered eyes. "I am not apologizing for it." The apartment was very quiet. "Jae-hyun," she said. "Yes. If you are saying what I think you are saying," she said carefully, "I need you to understand that I am currently your employee in a debt arrangement, and that makes this." "The debt is cleared," he said. She went completely still. "I applied it against your wages at the actual market rate for the work you have been doing," he said, "which is considerably higher than what you were calculating. The balance was cleared as of last week. I was going to tell you at the end of this week." She stared at him. "You could have told me immediately." "Yes," he said. "I was not ready to." The honesty of that landed somewhere deep. "So I have been free to leave," she said slowly, "for a week." "Yes. And I didn't know." "No. And I stayed." "Yes," he said. "You did." The thing between them that had been building since a kitchen at 10 p.m. and a dining table covered in economics notes and a name said in a particular way was now entirely in the room with them, and neither of them was pretending otherwise. "I am not a woman who does things carelessly," she said. "I need you to understand that. If I walk toward this, I walk toward it completely, and I will need the same from you." "I have not done anything carelessly in my adult life," he said. "This is not the exception." She looked at him. He looked at her. "The model," she said. "Your notes. I want them. You will have them. And this," she gestured at the space between them, "goes at the pace I set." "Yes," he said without hesitation. "And Yoon." "Yoon," he said, "will not be a problem after Thursday." She breathed. She extended her hand. He looked at it for a moment. Then he took it. Both hands. His thumbs pressed over her knuckles. Not a handshake. Something else entirely. "Gloria," he said. "Yes. Thank you for staying." "I didn't know I had a choice," she said. "You always had a choice," he said. "That was never in question." She looked at him. "I know," she said quietly. "That's why I stayed." The board meeting happened on a Thursday morning, and Director Yoon Sang-pil arrived at it with the specific confidence of a man who believed he had leverage and left it with the specific silence of a man who had discovered he had none. Jae-hyun's legal team had spent the previous 10 days documenting 3 separate instances of financial interference in Hanwook Group's operations that could be traced, with the right documentation, directly to Yoon Industries. The privacy violation case had been filed with the press regulator that morning, and 2 board members who had previously been sympathetic to Yoon's proposal had apparently received information about certain financial arrangements that changed their sympathies significantly. Jae-hyun presented the merger rejection calmly and completely. No anger. No drama. The cold, systematic dismantling of a position that had already been undermined before anyone sat down. Yoon left the meeting 20 minutes early. He did not come back. Gloria learned all of this from Chai, who delivered it with the understated satisfaction of someone who had been watching this particular chess game for a long time. "Is it over?" Gloria asked. "For Yoon," Chai said. "Yes. And for us," Gloria said. She hadn't meant to say us. Chai looked at her with the expression of a woman who had seen everything and found most of it predictable and some of it, occasionally, genuinely pleasant. That, Chai said, is a different question. He came home at 6 that evening, earlier than he had come home in the 4 weeks she had been there. She was in the kitchen. Not working, she had finished everything that needed doing and was sitting at the island with her notebook and the corrected model and his notes, which were covered in precise handwriting that was exactly as thorough as she had expected. He appeared in the doorway. She looked up. "It's done," he said. "I heard," she said. "Chai." He crossed the kitchen. Stood on the other side of the island. "Your model," he said. "The corrected version. With my notes. I've been going through them. And you are right about the equity ratio and the benchmark rate, but wrong about the impact measurement framework," she said. "Your approach is too conservative. You're thinking like a financier. The Development Bank Committee thinks like a development economist. Those are different metrics." He looked at her notes. Looked at his. "Show me," he said. She showed him. He listened. He pushed back twice. She held her position both times with the specific calm of someone who knows they are right and does not need to be loud about it. The third time he pushed back, she acknowledged his point and integrated it, and he saw her do it, saw her absorb the better argument without ego, and something in his face settled. "The proposal," he said. "Yes. I would like to help you submit it." She looked at him. "Not take it over," he said immediately. "Not put my name on it. Help you get it to the right people. There are 2 members of the bank's committee I know personally. I can arrange a meeting where you can present directly rather than going through the standard submission process." "Why?" she said. He held her gaze. "Because it is a good idea. And because the right doors should be open to people with good ideas regardless of what path brought them there." He paused. "And because I would like to see you use the degree you have not used yet in the way you are capable of." She was quiet for a moment. "Jae-hyun." "Yes. Are you always going to remember everything I say?" Something real crossed his face. "Apparently," he said. She closed her notebook. "Dinner," she said. "I made moin moin. It's a Nigerian dish. It will be ready in 20 minutes and you are going to eat it at a table like a person. I eat at tables. You eat at your desk 4 nights a week, and I have been watching you do it, and it stops tonight." He looked at her. "Is this the pace you set?" he said. "This is one of the things," she said. "Yes." The smile again. Brief. Real. The kind that changed his face entirely. 20 minutes, he said. He left. She stood at the kitchen counter and breathed and told herself to be careful and keep her eyes open and not move faster than she could handle. She was also already planning what to cook tomorrow. The night she kissed him was not planned. It was 3 weeks after the board meeting. The proposal had been submitted. The committee meeting was in 10 days. She was staying in the residence still, not because of the debt, which was cleared, but because he had asked her to stay, and she had said yes, and they had both understood what that meant and had been precisely building toward it in the way of 2 people who were both too deliberate to do anything carelessly. It was late. He had come in from a long day. She had left food in the warmer. She was reading in the living room when he came through and stopped when he saw her because she had rearranged the reading chair and the lamp so the light was better, and she was sitting in a pool of warm gold light with her book and her bare feet and the specific relaxed ease of someone who had started to feel at home somewhere. He stood at the edge of the room and looked at her with an expression that she had seen building for weeks and that was now entirely visible. She set the book down. She stood up. She crossed the room. She kissed him first. Brief. Direct. Her hand on his lapel. He went very still for 1 second. Then he was not still at all. One hand on her face. One at her waist. The specific certainty of a man who had been waiting long enough that when the moment arrived he had no hesitation left. She pulled back. Looked at him. "Okay," she said. "Yes," he said. His voice was different. Lower. The control at a different frequency. "I'm going to finish my chapter," she said. He almost laughed. The real kind. Almost. "Finish your chapter," he said. She went back to the chair. He stood at the edge of the room for a moment longer. Then he went to his study. But she heard, through the wall, the very specific sound of a man who was smiling. 6 weeks later, at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, Gloria Obi sat across a conference table from two members of the West Africa Development Finance Committee and presented her microfinance model for 45 minutes. She did not bring notes. She did not need them. Jaehyun was not in the room. This was hers, and they both knew it, and neither of them had needed to discuss it. She answered every question. She pushed back on two assumptions in their framework that she believed were wrong and explained why. She asked 3 questions of her own that told them she had read their previous funding reports and understood the priorities behind the program. At the end of the 45 minutes, the senior committee member looked at his colleague and then back at Gloria. "We will be in touch within 2 weeks," he said. She thanked them, stood, shook hands, walked out of the building into a Seoul morning that was cold and bright and entirely ordinary and entirely extraordinary. She called Jaehyun. He answered before the second ring. "Well," he said. "Well," she said. "I think I got it." A pause. The shape of everything in it. "Tell me," he said. She told him. All of it. Walking down the street in the cold morning with her breath making small clouds in the air and Seoul moving around her in its ordinary magnificent way, and his voice in her ear asking questions that showed he had read the proposal as carefully as she had written it. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "Gloria," he said. "Yes. I knew from the first week," he said, "that this was going to be what it became." She stopped walking. "What gave it away?" she said. "You reorganized my kitchen," he said, "without permission, and left a note explaining your reasoning. And the reasoning was correct." A pause. "I thought, this person is going to be a problem." She laughed. The real kind. Loud. The kind she had never adjusted to be smaller. "And was I," she said. "The most significant one I've ever encountered," he said. "Yes." She stood on the pavement in Seoul in the cold morning with her phone pressed to her ear and something in her chest so large and warm it was inconvenient. "I'm coming home," she said. She had not said home before. She felt the quality of his silence when she said it. "I'll have coffee ready," he said. She put her phone in her pocket. She walked toward home. Toward the man who had looked at a woman who broke his watch and seen something worth keeping. Toward the life that had been built, quietly, precisely, in the space between a debt and a choice. And she thought about the watch. The crack across its face. The 420 million one that had not, in the end, been the cost of anything. It had been the door. And she had walked through it. If you stayed until the very end of the story, you're exactly the kind of viewer this channel was made for. Drop a comment right now and tell me, what was your moment? Was it the kitchen? The photograph? The kiss? I read every single comment and I will see you in the next story. Subscribe if you haven't. Like this video, it tells the algorithm that this story deserves to be seen. And share it with someone who needs a love story that doesn't ask permission. Afro Soul Secrets TV. See you next time.